What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Faith and Pop Culture Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Blackaby, and I'm joined once again, as I always am, by the one, the only, Nyah Phillips. How are you doing today, Nyah?
Today I'm feeling inspired, Daniel. How are
Ooh.
you doing today?
Well, we could all use a little more inspiration in our life to be inspired by the many good things in life, and perhaps even some inspiring movies from time to time, which we will get
Yes.
into today. So we are back. Speaking of a segue, we are back from our own bit of an odyssey that we've taken the last couple weeks off here on the podcast. This busy schedules, a lot of travel. So it took a little bit of a summer reprieve, but we're back to talk about all the good things that have happened in culture. And this is our chance for the bulk of this episode to get into the Odyssey. That's sort of the big, the big movie of the year, perhaps of the last couple of years. And also just, I think there's so many, what makes this movie so fascinating is it's in many ways, it's become more of like a cultural event that touches on a lot of things. It brings up a lot of things. It's about the way we navigate culture, the way we navigate art, the way we deal with each other. It's got into the political area. There's so many things about this. So we do want to kind of break it down a bit, kind of get into our own review of the movie, as well as talk about some of the controversies and just some of the takeaways we have from this movie's success. Because we did talk about some of that before we saw the movie. But despite popular opinion, it is usually better to have your opinion after you have seen the movie. So we will get into it now that we have seen the movie. But before we get into there, I did want to maybe just do a bit of a roundup of just interesting things that caught our attention. Obviously, we've been off for a couple of weeks. Anything that you noticed sort of in pop culture, newsworthy that has led you to feel so inspired today?
Honestly, my head's just been in the Odyssey spiral, the Odyssey storm right now. So I've seen there's this trend going around where I might have talked about this before, but I still think it's funny, where people will watch like the Odyssey on their iPhone, like taped to a wall while they're at work, and the caption is "Watching the Odyssey as Nolan intended," and just the irony of that is really funny. And everyone's being super super creative. And also literally for like 5 minutes before I jumped on, I was watching some interview, and during the LA marathon, there was this guy that was running the marathon, and he looks over and who does he see but Christopher Nolan himself walking his dog. And the guy literally just goes up to him and is like, "What's up, Chris? I loved Oppenheimer," and then just keeps running. And he films the whole interaction, and it was just so funny. Like, you're talking to this is how it should be, but it's not, which makes it funny. You're talking to probably the most famous director right now. Sorry, Marty. I think Nolan might have surpassed you. And you're just like, "So, dude, I'm on my run. I'll stop for a second to say hi." And that's how it should be, but it's not. So it's really funny.
And it is always funny to me to like think of like guys like Nolan just like out there walking a dog, or like
Yeah.
like I don't know, like
He's so
Spielberg going through the
normal.
McDonald's drive-through. Like just there is sort of this like disconnect, and even the way we like, because we sort of approach these people like through their art. So it's almost like they're kind of at a distance, and we forget we talk about them as though they are not real people. They're just creators of movies.
Yeah.
So that is funny. And I've shared before, I won't say it again, that I had my own interaction with Christopher Nolan once. Although I did not stop him. As in I walked awkwardly behind him several times and peeked over his shoulder to try and see what he was talking about. A couple of things I noticed, and then we can get into the Odyssey conversation and what Mr. Christopher Nolan has provided for us. And a couple of things that I stood out to me just in the last, couple of days. A couple trailers and teasers for other things on the horizon. One is The Chosen. The Chosen season 6 just released its trailer, and I think I don't think you haven't kept up with The Chosen. I don't believe. I've watched parts of The Chosen. I've not been one that has seen every episode. I'm not like anti-Chosen. I just I watch other things. I watch
Yeah.
other things. But the teaser is really good, and it will be interesting to me that I actually wrote a short little article we can link below in the show notes. But like I feel like so much of like whatever like Christian biblical gospel adaptations, like they do showcase Jesus's ministry and life, but like within a film, like an hour and a half, hour, 40-minute film, in many ways, like those always feel like just like the preamble to get to the crucifixion and the resurrection. Like that's the meat, that's the, the main event. And so you sort of, you rush through the life, like, of of Jesus and the disciples, and where the Chosen is, as far as I know, like the only really adaptation that has played the long game to this extent that, for years and shows, they've really spent time with these characters, with this version portrayal of Jesus, but like now, according to this teaser, they have come to that the crucifixion moment, like some of those big events. So I am curious how they pull it off, and I don't know, just how it resonates differently, having had more than just like 45 minutes with these characters, in a movie, having had like 5 seasons. I don't know. I'm curious to see. I know it's going to be a big thing. I think like the actual crucifixion is going to be like a theatrical movie. So the season kind of leads right up to it. And then you go to the theater and you sort of see which will
That's
be.
going to be crazy to try, like, do your own version basically of the Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, essentially that's what
it's a cleaner version.
So I don't know. We'll see. You would assume it's maybe less graphic, but I don't know. The teaser showed that it's definitely going to hit hard. The other teaser I thought I would mention, because if anyone knows me, knows I would have to, is we got more Lord of the Rings coming up. We actually had 2 teasers. I didn't even put in my show notes. There was sort of a teaser for the Hunt for Gollum movie the other day. Andy Serkis did sort of like an announcement that they're filming, and I'm on the fence for the movie. I love Lord of the Rings, so I'm excited to see it. I don't know. I'm on the fence for this. I feel like Gollum as a character is one best used in very small doses, and to like have him sort of lead a movie, I think could be not
a little annoying.
I don't know. We'll see, and how they do it. Maybe it is sort of these other characters, and he's a part, but it seems like it's sort of a case study into Gollum, and I don't know. That's not high on my list of things, but I am excited for that. And then they also released the Rings of Power season 3. They just had Comic-Con last weekend, so a ton of trailers and stuff were released. But the Rings of Power is one that I continue to be excited for. I know the show has been divisive. I think in part for valid reasons. If people just think it's too slow, it just doesn't work for a lot of people. I know people, very normal, not culture war people that just stopped watching that I know, like in like partway through season 1, because they're like, I just didn't like it. So I think that is very valid. I also think that a lot of it, the discourse is very similar to to the Odyssey. Like they're even the very, very similar critiques and stuff of, the sort of this modernized, it's woke, and the casting and all these things that I think, like we'll get into with the Odyssey, have proven to be totally not the case. But I think it just, there was such like there's so much like smoke and such a uproar about all that I think it has just kept some people from actually experiencing the show. So I have liked the show. I don't think it's like a masterpiece show by any means, but I do think it is really good. And the season, I don't know if did you see the teaser? I don't think you've watched any of the show.
I watched a couple episodes, but I watched the first episode of the first season and like the 5th episode of the second season. So I'm not in it.
You need, I will force you for the sake of the podcast to, maybe we'll do episode reviews or something, but I think it has been really good. I think it is maybe not as good as people hoped, but I think it is significantly better quality than it gets credit for.
It was well done.
And it gets better as it goes. Like I think the second season is better than the first. I think the third season may be better. So it does sort of take that commitment. But I am excited for that. And maybe the last thing I mentioned, then we can get into a little Odyssey,
into the meat,
a little mythology, some mythology meat. I did do an interview. There's a new show that I should mention Fluff Piece. Kind of a fun. I mean, if you have kids in the age of like 3 to 6, it's more your target. They're the target audience. But kind of like a Mr. Rogers type. I grew up in Canada, so we had Mr. Dress Up and Fred Penner were like our Mr. Rogers, and they were awesome. But just sort of one of those kids shows that
Mr. Dress Up.
Oh, Mr. Dress Up. We'll do he was just the best. Like he was sort of like a Mr. I think he actually was connected to Mr. Rogers, and then he split off and did his own thing.
Yeah.
And he like would dress up in, he had puppets he'd talk to, and he'd have like a dress up he called it his tickle trunk. He'd open it and which sounds weirder when you say it, but it wasn't. And then they dress in costumes and they'd sort of do these things and teach you all these life lessons. He's this like real gentle, soft spoken guy. And it was the best. He's one of my heroes. So there will be no Mr. Dress Up slander on this show. But it is a show sort of like that, of a character that helps kids learn to critically think. And I had the opportunity to interview Sylvia Brendis, who created the show, and she also stars as the central character. And it's a streaming for Wonder Project, Amazon Prime. I think the first season is like part way through, and they've already been renewed for a second season. So I will drop if we have it out in time or later the interview for that, because she was a very pleasant and nice person, and I enjoyed the conversation. So if you're looking for things less intense than the Odyssey for your young children, maybe check out Fluff Piece. But all that out of the way, let's get into the Odyssey, because this has been a movie. I'm trying to remember. I think when at the end of last year, we did like a social media thing where we had like I don't know if it was top 5 or top 10.
Oh, maybe. So this was our most. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure this was both of our most anticipated.
I think so.
Film.
Yeah.
And I think that would probably like relate to many people that this.
Yeah.
Even if they weren't necessarily excited, this as far as like interesting films, and again, maybe that says more about the lack of quality films this year than anything else, but definitely one. I'm a Christopher Nolan fanboy to a degree. I don't know if you're as much of a fanboy. I guess I
think I liked it way more than you did. I'm gonna be honest.
See, I'm curious, because
you haven't heard my thoughts yet.
Yeah, so I will say, I'll share some of my thoughts here. But I did do, for the Collision, did my full review. So we'll link that below. You can sort of see me break it down a little bit. But we have not, other than you saying that you liked it, I have not heard any of your thoughts on this movie. So here's the plan. I thought we could review the movie a bit, share our thoughts. We'll obviously get into some of the controversies and stuff and kind of reflect on having seen the movie. Did they turn out to be anything? If so, what do we do with that? And then also I wanted to just touch on some of the aspects of this film, like the practical effects, and is there any significance to that? And does that correlate to the movie being a ginormous success? But maybe to kick things off, since my review is already out there, what were your sort of general takeaways and impressions of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey?
I loved it. I think that, so Dusty and I saw it in 70mm IMAX, which I think might also affect my my affinity for it. But I went in with I've never read the Odyssey. We weren't required to read in high school. I'm started listening to it, didn't get very far, and so now I really want to read it because I loved the movie so much. But I went in with a very basic knowledge of what the Odyssey was, and who all of these people were, and I think that kind of helped my expectations for it, because I was just like, oh, it's a Nolan, it's gonna look incredible. And I just think that the story was also just really well done and really incredible, even if there are maybe 1 or 2 character arcs that are made up. But we can talk about that later, like my thoughts on what makes a good adaptation, and we've kind of talked about that before. But I absolutely loved it. I was blown away. Both Dusty and I were worried that the all-star cast was gonna kind of throw it off a little, because every single face that is a main character in the movie, but it didn't. I was just, there are so many, there's the music and the sound design that they used, this probably is the best sound design out of any of his movies, because I could actually understand what they were saying most of the time, which is saying a lot for a classic Nolan film. Man, it was, I could talk about this movie for hours, and just all of the little details. I have shots that just run through my head on a constant. This is my Roman Empire. It runs through my head on a constant loop. I have this just specific sounds from the movie that continue to just come to mind throughout the day. It's one of my top 5 for sure.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that too, because that's some of my general takeaway. You can see my review. I thought it was really, I think I call it a cinematic masterpiece. So I'm definitely for it. I don't know if this would be like, rank among my favorite film or even necessarily my favorite Nolan films. I just think there's so much good going on that to me, it's hard not to, even if you don't resonate with it, which I did, like it's hard not to appreciate the movie. And like you were saying, even like the little things too, like I know there's so many shots in this that like are just brief moments and you're like, that sort of blow you. Like I know there was one, I think it's when they're going up to see the Cyclops and they're walking up the sort of the mountain and you sort of see it down kind of the mountain. You see like the ships down in the coast or whatever, and the whole crew's coming up. And I remember like in the theater being like, well, like that's just an awesome, like movie aside, any other factors, like that is like, especially on the big IMAX. I wasn't lucky enough to see it in the 70 or whatever. Like I only saw it in the regular old IMAX, but it's like, that's just an amazing moment. And then like after, when I was working on my review and kind of looking at some of the practical stuff, which we'll get into, like I stumbled upon like the story of them doing that, like how they had to like sort of take apart their whole filming mechanism and like hike it up this mountain, like just to get this one shot. And I think to me, that's what makes a Nolan film, not that he's like the only guy that would do something like that, but that's what makes it special is like, you just know there's like every part of it is, I don't know, like, and maybe this is just me being burnt out with some of the superhero stuff or some of these other blockbusters, but like, you just never feel with Nolan that like there's a lazy moment where it's like, oh yeah, well, we just need to slap on some spectacle. Like it's like just for that one shot, they went like all out to capture just this one visual moment within like a 3-hour, like a 3-hour movie. And I think, like the other thing too, and I feel like guys like Spielberg, maybe all like of the greats are similar in this way, which is sort of what I think the way you were articulating it. Like there's almost like a magnetic quality to, I actually just watched Interstellar for the first time in a long time, like yesterday or 2 days ago with my kids for the first time. And you see it in a movie like that too. I think Oppenheimer is perhaps the most where you see Nolan do that, where it's like, because in that movie, there's just all these scenes of dialogue, and yet the movie just moves, and like you're always captive. There's always doing little things to keep you hooked. And I feel like that's what I felt with this movie. It's like, I feel like a lot of the conversation about whether this movie is good or bad, especially by people who hadn't even seen it, very much just focused on like the broad sweeping, like, well, this character and his arc or this casting decision. And I feel like it's hard to really understand like a Nolan movie or like a movie like the Odyssey without sort of that cinematic experience of like, I don't know, just the way in like very subtle and like, small but intentional ways that the movie's like, just the way it's like edited together, or like you said, like, the way the sound is used to, and like the way the various lighting, plot lines, like there's just so much that just sort of always moves. Like, I don't know, like there's never a moment in this movie where I'm like, okay, like what's next? Like there's always stuff happening. I don't know, like,
and what I really like, well, just the whole, like, all of the scenes when they're in Troy, like, during the Trojan War, or even just in the horse, I just, like, could not peel my eyes away from the screen. There's just absolutely incredible. When they open the gates of Troy, oh my gosh, it's like, it's one of the best works of art that I've seen in a long, long time. I think that this is Nolan's best. It's my favorite of Nolan's, which is saying a lot because I love Inception and Interstellar. But what I really appreciate about Nolan that I realized from this film is that I think the reason that his movies speak to audiences so well is that he really focuses on what the heart of the story is actually about, and is able to like, since this is kind of a modern adaptation, not that it takes place in modern times, but that it was adapted in modern times, it's easy to like bring in some more kind of shallow, maybe political things, which people have accused him of doing because of books that he had drawn inspiration from, or because of casting choices, blah blah blah. But he really stays true to what are truths throughout humanity, like throughout the entire human condition, the entire human history, like the cruelty of man, like the longing to be home and responsibility to family and to the people that you're in relationships with. Like, I think he just did such a good job of making that the heart of the story, and not any of the more kind of surfacey things that people, I think, have accused him of making the movie about.
Yeah, I mean, it's the more meaningful stuff to me, and
Mhm.
we'll get into that with as far as the adaptation and what makes a good or bad adaptation, which I think to me just depends on on who you ask and what you want from
Well,
an adaptation.
I would say what doesn't make a good adaptation, like what should the not be the requirements to make a good adaptation, I think
Yeah,
would
and the
be
thing too is like
interesting.
it's like, and I tried to get at that in my own like my written review and my video review, is I think like a lot of the critiques of what Nolan's not doing is critiquing for him for things that he doesn't try to do. Like
Yeah,
to me, it's like
exactly.
you're more critiquing. It's like, well, like what I want from this is we sort of set that as the goal, and
Mhm.
because Nolan doesn't get there for many people, then it's like then it's bad. And it's well, like
Mhm.
I think the movie should be judged. I think all adaptations should be judged by like how well they get to the goal that they're trying to get to. And I think this movie to me does. Like I think Nolan pulls off exactly what he's trying to do in this movie. Like I think everything works. I think his sort of his vision for it uh, seems to be like that is what they
Mhm.
managed to portray. Not that the movie's perfect necessarily, but like I think
I think
taken
honestly
at
it might
large,
be.
like I think taken at large, it is. I don't know. I think measured against that, I think this movie is a clear success, even if it doesn't necessarily satisfy everyone. And even some of the things that I think don't work as well. Like I think there is a somewhat sort of choppy, like it's a very episodic and repetitive story, and I think the poem is episodic and
Yeah.
repetitive. Like, it's essentially just about about four different times. Oh, we're on a boat. Oh, we need food. Let's stop here. Get off the boat. Immediately encounter some some new fantastical threat. Some of them die. They all flee back to the boat. They sail off. Say, oh no,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do? Oh, we need provisions. Let's go to this island. And like they do that like four times, and it's not that any of the scenes are boring. Like it's
Yeah.
all spectacle and it's all, and I do think there are things that develop through those scenes that is different.
Yeah.
Like I think
That's what I was gonna
Odysseus
say.
himself, like thematically, there is sort of a unity to that. It just can come across a bit like, okay, oh
Yeah.
now oh it was a witch, a cyclops. Oh now it's giants. Now it's this,
Mhm.
and then now it's siren, and that's and there is sort of, but again, like to me,
But it
the only
develops, yeah, it develops Odysseus' relationship with his men and with the gods, and every decision that he makes really does build on itself, and you can kind of see that even if it's just a little bit. You can see how his cynicism kind of breaks down after each stop, and like you said already, like that's how the original poem is written as well. So
and
it's hard to get away from that.
like I think it's effective too. Just in the, like this is an Odyssey. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is if it was okay, well we already had the threat. Now we just got to like I think thematically it works to have these repeated at every turn. There's some new obstacle to overcome. I think all of it works. I just think some of the I don't know. To me, there is a sense of okay. I don't know how many how many more. And I think he did change. Like I know the Giants are sort of a newer. Like he changed some of those episodic events to be less similar to each other than in the poem. So like he did sprinkle in some variety. But I think the thing, one of the things I'll say too is, I almost feel like Christopher Nolan he's reached sort of that stratosphere of like a Taylor Swift, which is a weird comparison, but in the sense that like I feel like sort of like with Taylor Swift, like to me, is she the most talented songwriter and singer out there? Like no, like she's obviously very very good and people resonate, but like she sort of reached this level where like there's so much hype around everything she does, and then hype builds more hype, and then I think like the actual experience of her album, you can't really separate from the hype. Like if if an unknown artist released a Taylor Swift modern album, I don't think it hits the same way that it's a Taylor Swift and we're all excited and there's so much. And I feel like Christopher Nolan's sort of that way now with his film. Like every one of his movies is like an event and there's so much hype around it and there's so much build up that the experience of it, like that hype kind of, and that like the event nature of it becomes part of the experience.
And
which is
depending
why I always,
on what side of the controversy you're on too, you're coming in preconditioned to like it or to not like it. And so I think even for people who are ready to not like it, I think it's honestly good enough to kind of surpass that depending on how determined you are just to hate it. But that definitely has a play in it as well.
Yeah, and I think, and I would say too, like, you know, maybe I'll touch on this in a second, but I feel like the posture of everyone should always be to cheer like for something to be good. Like, be disappointed if it's not, if you're let down. But like I never, even movies that I assume I probably won't like, or I assume I probably will like I kind of go in just like, hey, just root for this movie to do well. So like I don't know. I feel like I hopefully don't go in with too much precondition. But like the thing I like about the Nolan movie, and then we can get into the controversies, is just that they're always doing something. They're always whether even like a movie like Tenet, which I didn't like. Like I don't think Nolan like I don't think Nolan is, you know, batting 1,000% by any means, but like I think they're always at least interesting. And as someone that watches a lot of movies, reviews a lot of movies, I appreciate movies that are at least interesting to talk about. But one of the things that made this movie interesting from a Christian perspective, a cultural perspective, a movie fan perspective, is that it very much got pulled into sort of the I don't know, the culture war stuff. Like there was so much like opinions about this movie that were like set in stone months before the movie released in theaters, and people had opinions, and it's like, well, you know, if they like it, then we gotta not like it, and well, if they you know, if they don't like it, then I guess we have to pretend like it's better, you know. It very much just sort of became this, I don't know, this like you hold it up and pick it apart for political and cultural reasons. So I thought we could get into some of those. So we talked about in the lead up to this film, and there's sort of, I don't know, it seems like there's three main controversies, at least big ones. Like, there are other things that people are mad at. People are always mad at something, but the three that it seems to me is like Lupita, I always say her name wrong, Nyong'o?
Lupita Nyong'o.
Yeah. Her casting as Helen was a controversy. Yeah. That might have been the first controversy. That's the first thing that was news released that people came across. So people had thoughts about that. Elliot, formerly Ellen Page, the casting as a Greek warrior, allegedly, that became a very big controversy. And then the third one is maybe just sort of the modernization. We've sort of touched on that, like that this, you know, is it authentic? You know, is Christopher Nolan sort of desecrating this classic that we all pretend to have read and memorized and loved? And so those are the three. And maybe real quick, we could just run through all three of those to kind of in hindsight, looking back. And we can start with our good friend Lupita, because to me, we've established on this show, this is the Faith and Pop Culture podcast is a fan of actress Lupita.
Everyone loves Lupita here at the office.
Yeah, I think she's great. I think she's. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that she's in where I was like, oh no, she's in this. Like it's always like, oh cool, she's in this. You know, like, which is funny because, and in some ways I do get, I don't know, I maybe get some of the initial knee jerk reaction to her casting. But it's just funny because I saw the casting news before I saw like the backlash, and my thought was, "Oh, cool, Lupita's in this. You know, that's cool. That's not interesting." And then I saw, I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm supposed to be mad that she's Helen. You know, that she's not as Greek as the German actress that played Helen in Troy." But we'll start with her because, in my opinion, this was always a silly controversy that I think, having seen the movie, is proven to be like even sillier and more about nothing. Like to me, she is perfectly fine in this movie, as you would expect from a talented Oscar-winning actress.
Yeah, and it helps that like like race really isn't a conversation in this movie. Like this story is not about race pretty much at all. And so that's not highlighted at all. Like when you're watching it, it doesn't stick out to you. It's not just like, oh, there's here's a black lady here. Why is she in this movie? Like that's never a thought. First of all, that's probably gonna cross my head at all. But for this movie specifically, and also it's a fictional story. I know that Homer apparently, like, I think described Helen of Troy as white armed or something like that. I don't know. I saw something in passing, but I think it's again it's a there should have been Greek actors in it. I think that there should have been, that might have been helpful just in general. But like the beauty about art and adaptations is that you can really reimagine and reinterpret past masterpieces to kind of examine yourself and your present world, and the realities of the heart of man and everything. And so I think that this can be part of it, especially if race isn't part of the story, because it's not a story about slavery in the South. It's just not. And so that would be different. But also, one more thing, and then I'll let you jump in. If you're gonna hold up this argument about Lupita or Zendaya that shouldn't be in this, or even Himesh Patel, that shouldn't be in this movie because they're not white or they're not Greek, then you have to hold that up. Even though, like, Matt Damon is white, he's light-skinned, like, you kind of have to hold up that argument with them too, because they're not Greek. And so it just doesn't, it's not right. whatever, yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and I think my takeaway too, I mean, I'm of the opinion that I don't care if there's Greek people in this movie. Like, I don't think, I think Greek people can play, people that weren't Greek, and non-Greeks can play Greek. Like, to me, that's just not I don't know, like, this is not really how movies need to work. But I think with the Lupita too, like, the thing is, I don't know, like, I think what bothers me the most as a Christian is I feel like it becomes very clear with some of the way the rhetoric is framed that, like, it's hard to get away from just the racist implications that I get, those, like, neck deep in the source material and authentic, and they're mad at all the various, like, ways that the movie is not perfectly translating whatever you see as the ideal, the Odyssey. But when it becomes just about, and just the disingenuous way of, like the argument was not even that, well, she's black, is the way it was framed online is like, well, Helen's supposed to be beautiful. And it's like, well, can Lupita not be beautiful? Like, and it's telling too, that, like, the picture that kept circuit still, like I saw this morning, the one they keep using to make their points is from Lupita from an entirely different movie. And it's like, well, like, why can't you show her from this? Like, is you have to try and find somewhere from somewhere else to try and prove your point that she cannot possibly be beautiful, apparently for no other reasons than this, that she's doesn't look like, whatever her name, Diana Kruger, like a white woman. Yeah, and again, not to say that, like, everyone that doesn't like it is racist. I just think there is definitely an undercurrent of the pushback very much reads sort of racist. And I think too, it doesn't help when we quoted him last time, like the Elon Musk, sort of the Oscar quota. Like, I think in some ways, a lot of the pushback isn't even really about Lupita as much as it is the Oscar diversity quotas and, like, what that represents in the larger sort of, woke takeover of culture, whatever you want to call it. And, like, to me too, having seen the movie, that too has proven to be so silly. Like, you can easily pinpoint within the first, like, 5-10 minutes of this movie, like, 100 other ways that this movie could have met all the quotas without Lupita ever showing up. Like, there's the idea that was the only reason to cast this woman was so he can win an Oscar, to me, is just misinformed.
Well, and I think first of all, I think it's really cool to have Lupita in this role to try and, or it's just kind of a way to, like, re-examine what beauty standards are for women just in general. That's not like the classic, was it Kruger? Like, people who look more like Kruger, who is also a gorgeous woman. But also, I think it's just really unfair to to try and name intentions behind an artist's art that they have, I mean, pretty much no, there's no proof that that's their intention. Like you can't just say this one tiny decision is showing that Nolan is trying to push his woke agenda. And there's not really a lot. If we weren't in this political climate now, I think that these decisions wouldn't have as much weight behind it. I think sometimes, like you said before, Nolan is just hiring his friends. You know, he likes working with his friends. They're talented people, and he thought that they would be good for that role. And I think it's unfair to say he has an intention that, honestly, there's not really any weight behind other than the political climate that we're in right now.
And the funny thing is, yeah, like the funny thing is too, like the film itself almost intentionally goes out of its way, not in a response to the criticism, but like to it's not bound by the things that the criticism is based on. In terms of like the first thing you see of Lupita is she turns and she has like a big scar on her face, and like the whole idea that he sets up in that scene is like, this was not about, not that she's not a beautiful actress or woman, but like the war was not about, in his telling, like it was a more grounded, like a less romantic, like it was about sort of trade routes and power and politics, and you know, like it wasn't about, and like she's even like made intentionally to be disfigured and like to not sort of be this, which is just funny because so much of the criticism was she can't do it because she, you know, apparently she can't be beautiful enough. And no one's like, this isn't about beauty. Yeah, and she's in it for like 2 scenes. Like she plays two different characters, twins, and collectively she's in it for like what, 2 minutes? At that. So it's to me, that whole thing is the one controversy that I think says more about the people with the criticisms than it does about the movie. Like I think it exposes things that I find troubling, not with everyone, but like the overall kind of consensus on that, I think is problematic for something that seems so simplistic and small. The Elliot Page thing, I think, is valid depending on how you look at it. Again, I think is this Christopher Nolan casting, you know, a trans actor as some sort of statement and, you know, woke agenda? Like, I don't know, maybe in some ways. Like, I think it's also, you know, when Elliot was Ellen Page, she acted in Inception, and Christopher Nolan worked with her for months and has a relationship with her and thinks highly of her. And now he's casting, he's maybe one of the only people in Hollywood that is going to cast Elliot Page in a central role like this. So I don't know. Like, to me, there's always more personal stuff than just, well, clearly he's trying to make a statement, and maybe it's just that he's Christopher Nolan and he has a friend, and again, like if like Ellen Page is she's was an excellent actress. Like it wasn't like she was some slub that, you know, couldn't, you know, scrub that couldn't act. And Elliot Page is fine in this. I think the 2 ways to look at it for me, and maybe I'll get your thoughts too, is like, I think from like an external perspective, as a Christian, I get the concerns, and I think they're valid, that it is sort of this implicit affirming of sort of transgender ideology, and even the fact that they have like a younger version of the character, played by a younger actor in the film who is a biological male. Just, I don't know, it is jarring when you know who this person is and what they've been through and their struggles and confusion, and like, so there is that sense that, okay, I don't think we should take too lightly if we're just sort of, you know, it is sort of a stamp of approval, I guess, that this is a male actor playing a male character. So I think there's that side. As far as like the within the movie itself argument, it's just not a big deal. Like, I think it is. I saw someone, I forget which political commentator, one I don't normally follow, but kind of described it as like a pebble in the shoe. It's like, it is jarring. It is. I think it would be better to not have cast Elliot Page. But it never gets to, it's such a minor role. And even within the role, like, it's this idea that, according to the original rumors, like Elliot was going to be Achilles, and he's going to be
Mm-hmm.
the ideal of a masculine warrior. And then you see the movie, and it's like, well, not, Achilles
That's
isn't
the
even it.
opposite, actually.
It's the opposite. It's like, no, this is someone that was
Yeah.
drafted into the army. They weren't a warrior. And then like when it came time to take Troy and they needed to leave one person out to not make it in and do the fighting, they chose this warrior
Mm-hmm.
because they aren't sort of that
Yeah.
masculine, big, like there's nothing within the movie that where the character doesn't sort of make sense. If you just sort of accept them as, okay, whatever you think of Elliot, Ellen Page as an actor, actress, like the character is male and the way they look and act and stuff makes sense within the context of the film.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know, it did bother me a bit, but it's just so minor that to me, the thought of that alone sort of overshadowing everything in the film, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't for me. But what were your
Yeah.
maybe your impressions?
That one was definitely a little more difficult for me to grapple with. Just because the whole, like, I've never experienced that, and I'm really grateful that I've never had to deal with those that struggle. And so there's a lot of heavy things behind, like, just that conversation for me, for sure. So that one was, it's always difficult for me to grapple with that, as a person of faith who knows that, like, God has made you, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, how he made you. And so, like, it's just difficult. And so that's just, besides that, it bothered me a little. Like, I can see more weight behind this argument that Nolan picked Paige for this role specifically for Oscar bait, or for some sort of agenda, because the role is made up. It's not in the original poem. From what I've read, I'm pretty sure that that's right, but I could be wrong. And so, if he claims to not write scripts with actors in mind, but this one kind of seems like they were in mind a little bit more. But that being said, the role does make sense. That Paige would play that role, and it was a fine job. It took me out a little bit whenever Paige spoke. I will be honest, but they did a fine job. But this could be like a whole other conversation. There's so many, it's just a very complex conversation, I think, that we would have to save for an
Yeah, I
entire
think there's so
episode.
much. There's definitely so much to that, and I think where I come away with it is just I don't think I think it represents a lot of things that Christians should be very engaged with and
Mm-hmm.
aware of, and not
And
just
careful
totally
with.
careful with. I just think in the movie, I don't think it becomes this sort of thing. Like the movie does not become, that's not the defining moment of the film. And I think, I don't know,
Yeah.
like for me, again, not to be dismissive of things that we find problematic from a Christian perspective, but like there are many movies that have things that within them that, like, hey, this is a movie that says a lot of great things, has a lot of amazing things to appreciate, but these things over here, I think we got to wrestle with that. And like to me, that is sort of what this is. And I think we can still appreciate the movie while also acknowledging the complications. And so to me, unlike the Lapita thing, which I just think is silly, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't silly to me as far as it being an issue. I just think making it the level to which it is being elevated is like this movie is there for sort of this woke agenda thing.
Mm-hmm.
To me, is just not. I don't know. I did not take it that way. And maybe lastly, is it the other sort of controversy or opinion is sort of what you've touched on already now, like just the idea of like the adaptation. Like this is sort of a modern version in a way, as opposed to, I don't know, an authentic, direct from Homer's own mouth to the screen. Which again, if that was the case, all the characters would speak Greek.
Yeah.
So any adaptation where they're speaking English, even like
Yeah.
the translations, the fact that they're translations mean there's already
Mm-hmm.
modernized in a sense. And I don't know, I will say I typically just don't really care about this conversation. Like I don't go into these things with this sense that, okay, this is like a, historical teaching. Like I think it's a movie, and I think
Yeah.
it's doing a lot of things that movies do. and I don't think it has to be like, well,
Mhm.
now kids are going to think that the Trojans wore this kind of armor when really, if you go into the archaeological record, they would have worn like, I don't know. That's not
Yeah.
what this movie is about to me. And I say in my review too, I do think it is telling, like the casting of Travis Scott, I believe the rapper, which is
Mhm.
bizarre in some ways. Like the movie opens with him, like he's
Mhm.
like hitting the ground with his stick, and he's like telling the story of the sacking of
I wish
Troy.
he
And
had sung though. That would have made it better.
yeah, it
You
is funny to
know?
cast like I guess a musical artist and just have him speak, but I guess
Yeah.
the rhythmic telling, and to me, and I think Christopher Nolan himself sort of spoke about it, like that sort of sets the tone for me. That okay, this is because he's Nolan said in interviews like he cast Scott sort of as a nod to sort of the oral tradition and like how
Mhm.
rappers and that is sort of like our oral tradition telling these sort of rhythmic stories and which maybe is too noble view of Travis Scott's rap music, but I think like the fact like starting with him and like for me sort of set the tone and like put me at ease a bit of like, hey, this is not trying to be your university introduction to Homer's The Odyssey. Like this is sort of another sort of modern telling of the themes adapted for the times in various ways and trying to communicate like almost as though like this modern bard is telling you the story and he's
Mhm.
going to do it in a way that connects to his audience the same way like the oral tradition would work, where they would change and alter things depending on who they were talking to, and like the story until it was like written down was constantly changing. So I was not bothered by. I mean, I was to me, and maybe I'm just this is a sort of a soapbox for me, but like some of the language, like this, like randomly throwing in like some f bombs, like which just totally doesn't fit the.
That
And
was wild.
it's not like the whole movie itself is just filled with that. It's just like
Mhm.
I mean, like two of the three, I think, come in like the same little dialogue, and to me, that sort of like that doesn't add anything to the film. Like that doesn't. It actually like distracts from it, and like
Mhm.
breaks more of the immersion than the fact that the armor or something was
Mhm.
slightly different. But I
But
don't know.
if
What is your?
yeah. No, I agree. Again, it's an adaptation. Like Nolan, I think you should have creative freedoms when you're doing an adaptation. And the fact that it is an adaptation, you shouldn't. I think the fidelity, the amount that an adaptation matches the original source does not really have a super strong connection to how good the actual adaptation is. I think, like you've said before, it's like if you're at the heart of what the or what the original source is about, that's gonna make it a good adaptation as long as the source is good. Let's be honest. Um, oh, I lost my train of thought.
But
But
no, that is
yeah,
yeah. Like that's to me, and that ties into both some of the political controversy and sort of the adaptation thing is like
hmm
to me the sign of like excellent art is excellence, like not
yeah,
agreeableness to your politics
hmm
or okay, well, like a compare like I've read the Odyssey years ago, and like I intentionally didn't want to read it again, even I usually do for these sort of movies and reviews, and so I'm familiar, and I was like, I just don't want to get into that like where I'm constantly okay, this change like, where it
yeah,
becomes about like okay, this movie exists just to adapt this, as opposed like this movie exists to sort of explore these same themes and characters and present them in a
yeah,
way that entertains and speaks. And to me, yeah, like an adaptation, I get, and the people that get the most mad at it tend to be those like that hold the original, like that are most well
yeah,
versed, and really they, like we probably don't have time to get into like the whatever her name is, Emily Wilson, who did
yeah.
the kind of the sort of modern feminist translation, and which apparently Nolan said like was part of his inspiration, and everyone got mad at Nolan. And then Emily Wilson herself saw the movie and said it was like
And she
garbage,
got
and
mad at him.
yeah,
But
which is
yeah, I mean,
yeah, go on.
the biggest, I think, issue that she had with it, and this is what I was trying to say earlier, so I remembered what I was going to say, is that she just kept listing events that he didn't put in the movie. And I'm like, if he put this is a big part of adaptations is cutting things out. If he put every single scene that was in the original poem in that movie would be at least 5 hours long. At least. It would be so long. Nobody would watch it. And so nobody would be able to be mad at it because no one would see it except for the people who want every single word of the original poem in the movie. And so like there's casualties in adaptations because you just can't do every single
and I think I think in some ways it comes down to like the sense of ownership we have of these stories, that like these stories exist to like we sort of have this ownership of them, and they need to give me what I want from it, what I expect. And I think that goes to, I mean, all fandoms and things. And I think that's the Rings of Power. Like we sort of have this ownership of Tolkien, and because this adaptation and this story doesn't match what we would want, or, you know, it cuts out things we would have kept, or, you know, does this or that, like we feel like it's bad or wrong. Or I do think the one part of Emily Wilson's sort of very scathing criticism of the movie that I do agree with, because I talked about it in my review. She says at one point, she says, there are no gods, and yet shipwrecks and death are presented as inevitable consequences of blinding the son of Poseidon and devouring the cattle of the sun. Zeus's law is portrayed as crucially important, and yet there is no Zeus. Nolan's vision of the world is not quite big enough to include either real gods or real people who might be different from us. And that was one of my, like, maybe not quite as strong as she does, but I do think there is sort of an awkward tension where Nolan sort of grounds it in like more realism. It's less mythical, and yet because of the story and what has to be included, it's like, well, there aren't really gods, you know, but there are gods. Like then there's Cyclops and there's Calypso, and like there sort of is this supernatural stuff, and yet there's not. And like even like the movie, like the opening sort of title card is like, you know, a time of apparent magic. And yet it seems like everywhere these characters go is like clearly magic and mythical creatures. And no one seems super like, oh, I've never seen this. Like there is sort of this sense. Really, like, I think there is a sense that
I really disagree with this one. Yeah. You can finish.
I mean, to me, it's just sort of like, I think he has grounded it realistically, and yet he still preserved like the elements of the mythical. So it's like he sort of presents the world as like a time where no one really believes in magic, and you know, it's, you know, there isn't, Zeus's law is sort of like a, you know, like a more a moral code than it is like an actual Zeus is gonna, you know, if you get the sense that these characters don't interact with the gods on a regular basis, you know, like even some of the more mythical characters like Achilles or Hercules, some of those guys aren't in the movie, obviously, because they're from earlier part. But so you sort of have that, and yet, like, to me, when you do see like Cyclops and like just randomly a bunch of big giants on the beach, and it's like, well, like, is this a world that's, you know, filled with myth and legend and magic, or is it a more grounded, like, hey, it wasn't for beauty, it was for political trade routes, and it's characters don't really believe in the, you know, Zeus isn't real, it's just a law we follow. And it's like, well, like, I don't know, I think there is something lost that is, I don't know if, I don't think it, like, I don't know, I don't think it's a huge issue. I don't think Nolan ever like perfectly finds that balance of like.
Really? I thought he did. I really disagree with this, because I think like that was the whole point of the story is that Matt Damon, or Odysseus, is coming to terms with the fact that he's not in control, and that there are other forces that are in control, which in this world are the gods. And I think it was really cool that he grounded it in that we didn't like see any of these actual gods, because
except for Athena, I guess.
Well, but she wasn't really. That was just like his imagination of what she would look like, but not necessarily what she would look like. And so I thought, I mean, and she even says like, he's like, can't God speak in a way that man understands? And she goes, who doesn't understand fire? Who doesn't understand thunder? And so I think that's the whole point of the story, is that even though you don't see these gods as mortals or like as something tangible, that they're still there and then they still exist. Because that was the whole thing in the end, is that when he the way that he gets back is by giving himself to Poseidon and to Zeus, and they, even though it's turbulent, get him back to Ithaca. So I really disagreed with this, even though you don't see them as like actual physical people. I think their presence is still very heavy on the story and on the characters.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Like, I think their presence, and I think that's what makes it an interesting movie for Christian. Like, essentially his victory or like resolution is to like literally sort of baptize himself and allow the God, you know, surrender to the will of the gods, where I found the tension wasn't that the gods weren't present in the story, because clearly they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I think Nolan sets up a world that doesn't really allow for that to happen. Like, he sets up this grounded world that where he sort of in some ways removes all the mythical and like, okay, this is more historical. These characters seem like they don't really believe in the supernatural, and it is almost like a cultural Christianity of like, yeah, Zeus's law, we got to follow that. But even Odysseus is sort of like, yeah, but there is no real Zeus. Like, it's his law, it's his hospitality, and yet clearly the world is filled with these mythical beings. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think there's inconsistency with like,
I didn't get that at all.
to me, I just sort of felt like if there is so much presence of the gods and
Mm-hmm.
mythical creatures, then like then it isn't a time of apparent magic. Like, it's a time of magic. Like, characters clearly encounter this stuff all the time. So there is, even just this like kind of agnostic sense of, well, are the gods true? It's like, well, clearly they are, because they interact with people. And so I don't know. I just think it's sort of a realistic take and also the very mythological take of the original. And Nolan kind of goes in the middle. And I feel like, having not committed to either one, it's like sometimes the story is grounded without the mythology. Sometimes it is very mythological, but it never feels consistent. Like, for me, it wavers back and forth. But we'll say, maybe last thing to say to close is, I guess in conclusion too, like, I think the irony to me with how much criticism there was like from Christians and conservatives, and is that like the actual modernization that Nolan does in this film, in my eyes, very much veers it more towards a Christian worldview than it does away from it. Like, to me, this
Mm-hmm.
is actually a very, take away the casting or the outside discourse. Like, this is a very conservative story. Like, more so than, like, I think that's what part of what Emily Wilson struggles with. Like, more so than the original, like the source material. It is very much about kind of preserving this old way of life, this sort of religious codes that, without this sort of foundation. And I get there is, and maybe it just depends on how you feel about what we just talked about, but I think there is sort of a sense of almost like an Elon Musk Christianity of, well, it's not really about the gods as much as it is about Zeus's law. Like, there's a lot more talk about his law than there is about anyone actually worshiping or caring about Zeus. Like, as long as we just sort of live according to Zeus, that's what keeps it. Like, so I get that criticism that, well, maybe this is not like a Christian story as far as, like, to appear on
Because
Wonder
Zeus is in
Project.
it. Yeah.
And because it's pagan, but I don't know. I found the actual like thematic stuff actually very agreeable as a Christian. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the message of the film about sort of fighting the will of the gods and, surrendering to that sort of fate and not trying to sort of control our own destiny, and to sort of try and preserve this sort of old religious code that kind of guardrails our own human nature from just feeding our own carnal. Like, to me, that's like the epitome of a conservative Christian movie, which is so ironic considering some of the controversies. But any last sort of thoughts on maybe just that theme or just the movie itself before we wind things down?
It's really good.
Are
I really
you?
liked it.
Are you? I'm guessing. Will you see it again? I probably won't see
um,
it in the full
yeah.
format. I probably will see the movie again, because I do think it is a movie you sort of need to see in theaters, as
Yeah.
opposed to like, like you were saying, on like a Wii U screen or something. Uh, but I don't know. I think there's a lot to get into. Way more we
Yeah.
could have got into with this. Again, that's why I love Christopher Nolan, is he gives us stuff to talk about. So,
That's right. Thanks, Chris.
and I feel like the conversation will definitely continue. But for this episode, the conversation will continue in a different direction as we end this episode, as we always do, with our favorite segment, Things We Like That You Should Like Too. So, Nyah, this is your chance to let the people know something that they should like that perhaps they don't already like. So what is it that you are liking this week?
Rocktopus.
That is the thing of nightmares. Is that
Do you want to hear it?
Wait, uh, for those watching the video, hold that closer. Like, This is like Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
It's a
Rocktopus.
rocktopus.
Where does one get a rocktopus?
There's like I'm gonna try and split his legs out. There's a 3D print oh, this should have been a photo at my wedding with the ring showing. It's like there's a 3D print model that you can get. I think it's free. There's so many of them. There's one of him on a rocking chair. That one's fun. Anyways.
Well, I will say, I don't know if I fully endorse that everyone needs to like and enjoy a rocktopus, but if by chance my next birthday or special event, if you were to gift me a rocktopus, I would proudly display it somewhere. As
his ears are so detailed. Don't focus.
There's like Christopher Nolan making an epic film. The attention to detail that has gone into making this rocktopus is something to appreciate and be astonished by. So hey, if you have not previously, I'm assuming probably most of you have not enjoyed and liked a rocktopus before. This is your chance. Go buy yourself a rocktopus, bring it with you to the theater to go see the Odyssey, and just have a good time.
You won't regret it.
All around. But thanks everyone for tuning in once again. Again, always encourage you guys, if you have thoughts or you agree or disagree or just things we did not talk about, don't be shy. Jump into the comments, send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And we will be back now that we are back from our Odyssey and we have returned from the many voyages. We'll be back next week, kind of back on a regular schedule. So we will see you again next week for more conversations on faith and pop culture.